there's my trading warrior brother, Luke Gromen. Luke, Happy New Year. I know it's February, but I could say it to you. I hope this is a great year for you and your subscribers. And I'm so glad I discovered you. I'm like Colonel Parker, and you're Elvis.
You're too kind. Thank you very
All
much. And
right.
Happy New Year to you too. I appreciate it.
All right, Luke. So why don't we start with the red wave? That things are different now. I was saying for traders, it's much more difficult to have conviction. That's another department that's been shut down because there's a lot of whippy action. Um, what is your impression? Has your narrative shifted at all with the red wave coming in from what it
Not
was?
not really. I mean, the last couple months, really since Trump got elected, for me, it's been about two discrete time horizons, which was sort of the ensuing the first 2 to 3 months of the year, as or post, probably more apropos post inauguration, first 2 to 3 months. And then what came after. And to your point, first 2 to 3 months, I have very little conviction or visibility. It is so politicized.
Yeah.
And the only thing we've really been harping on, I would say, is this order of operations, essentially. Anything that makes the dollar stronger is going to risk triggering this 3Q23 3Q22 in trading regime of dollar up, gold up, everything else down. And
Yeah,
so
wrecking ball. Yeah.
the wrecking ball.
All
And
right.
so it really is the first 2 to 3 months, the lack of visibility is around uh, I just don't know what they're going to do. Now, beyond 3 months, to me, it is crystal clear they're going to take steps to make sure the dollar is weaker. I don't think a ton weaker, but weaker. And I think we then get into a potential Goldilocks scenario, if done right, where you weaken the dollar meaningfully. Perhaps they use
Right.
gold to help reduce the debt load. You do some Doge, you do some reshoring investment, and you could end up with, I think, a world later this year that shouldn't be able to exist, according to a lot of the correlations we've all come up under, which is to say, I think there's a world where in 6 to 9 months we could have $3,500 gold, we could have 4 to 4.5% 10-year Treasury, we could have $70 oil, we could have DXY at 102, 104. And I think you probably have NASDAQ actually slightly lower, and I think you have the industrials significantly higher. And that's actually a really good world. That's a really good world for
Yeah.
investing. But it's a world that I don't think a lot of people, historically, that list couldn't exist together. But I think that's where we end up in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. So the dollar's been giving signals of topping, and your levels are real good. I think that you're starting to chart everything now, Luke. Because you're coming up with levels like 104 and a half, which is a level that I could see. I actually think they're going to be so successful that they'll take it under par by late summer.
That could
That's
be.
going to be
I can see
that'd be a
that.
hell of a tailwind for everything, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You get the dollar down like that, you're going to get equities up big, you're going to get gold up big, you're going to get Bitcoin
Yeah.
up big, going to get paradoxically, you're going to get 10-year yields probably back to 4. The correlation between the dollar and 10-year yields has been so strong for the last couple of years. The dollar, and that's simply a function of the combination of foreign borrowing in dollars, which is enormous, $13 trillion, and foreign ownership of dollar assets, which is also enormous, even more enormous, $22 trillion net. So every time the dollar gets too strong, yes, it's a wrecking ball, but the wrecking ball, foreigners have a gigantic $22 trillion piggy bank of US dollar assets, including treasuries that they will sell to raise dollars. And that's why this correlation has gotten so tight between the dollar and the 10-year. And so, yeah, if you get the dollar down towards 100 later this summer, that,
Yeah.
that's 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 risk on.
7,000
Yeah.
7,000 S&Ps.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
All right, so I wanted to address the bond market, and you're talking about the 10-year maybe getting down to 4. When I look at TLT here, uh, they look in trouble. They look like they're in trouble. So before we get to your destination of 4% yields, and I think that there's more pain to come. And this 85 level in TLT, Luke, look how important it is. If you look left. And so people are calling it, I know I didn't look at your stream, but I bet when people were calling this a head and shoulders bottom that was coming out, you didn't believe it. But under 85 is a big deal. Look at 85 all the way
Oh
to the
yeah, there's
left.
not a lot of support under there, is there?
Right. So I mean, if we take out 85, we're going to new lows in TLT.
Yeah,
That's the way it looks.
and to me, I think when I hear Besant say last week, Trump and I are
Yeah.
watching the 10-year, to me, I think that is the sign that that this chart will hold, the TLT
Okay.
will hold, and what will give will be your dollar chart. In other words, they
Okay.
will. If they can get dollar down, this chart will hold. If the dollar goes back to 109, 110, look out below on TLT. And then they're into real trouble because at least from what I'm hearing from traders, is you get the 10-year up near 5 and people will shoot first and ask questions later in terms of risk. They are going to, they'll sell everything except the dollar at 495 on the 10-year. And so I think that's the line in the sand if I had to guess that Besant wants to avoid at all costs. And we started to see signs of that, right? When we
Yeah.
see Besant come out, last week's QRA, he was pretty critical in the preceding 2 years that Yellen had not termed out the debt. And then he gets in the seat and he doesn't term out the debt. And I think he ultimately got sat down and read in and as to the true state of demand at the long end of the Treasury curve. And I think it's terrible. I don't think it's much of a market. The Fed has not sold a 10 plus year Treasury on net since 2010. So ultimately, I think that 10-year or that, excuse me, that TLT, and I know TLT is a little different than 10-year, but I ultimately
Yeah.
think that the 10-year won't be allowed to go much over 4.8, 4.9, maybe 5 at the worst case, and that the release valve will be the dollar. And if they can keep the dollar down by any number of means, then I think that TLT chart will hold.
Okay. I do see the potential for us taking out this high we had in October, which was a low in the bond market too. So we'll see what happens there. We've lost a little mo in Bitcoin over the last few months. Kind of reminds me of the S&Ps, just sideways action. Bulls will call it consolidation. Bears will call it distribution. So, what do you think it is? S&Ps I mean, really, you look at the S&Ps, they've been moving sideways since just December, maybe even November. So, the melt up hasn't been in the US. The melt up has been in Europe. The DAX is making new highs. China's come back big time. So that's kind of confirming that the markets believe the dollar has topped and that maybe if there is a correction, the leaders are going to be offshore, not onshore. What do you
I think
think of
that's
that?
yeah, I think that's distinctly possible, particularly given the geopolitics, right? So
Yeah.
something, as you know, that caught my eye last week, for example, was that the United States essentially strong-armed Panama to leave the Chinese Belt and Road. And geopolitically, the United States seems to be taking a position of essentially a new Monroe Doctrine, which is, vis-a-vis China. We don't want China's Belt and Road in the Western Hemisphere. And as a great power, that is our right to say. I won't opine on whether it's the right thing to do or not. It might be. However, I don't think I think markets are starting to sniff it out in the way you just described, but I don't think most traders have made the connection yet about what the single biggest Chinese Belt and Road hub in the Western Hemisphere is. And
Europe?
it's the Nasdaq.
Oh, okay.
For 10 years, China has been running massive surpluses against the US and then recycling those surpluses into the Qs. And so you can see it that the foreign direct investment, which is heavily China driven since 2014 into US equities, has gone from like $4 trillion to $16 trillion. So there are
Wow.
trillions and trillions of dollars in of Chinese dollars, Chinese capital in the QQQs. And so if America wants China out of the Western Hemisphere, if they don't want the Belt and Road in the Western Hemisphere, you're going to get a lot of price action we should start to see that is essentially I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. And what you just described is exactly that. Chinese money, I'm taking my ball, I'm going home. Europeans,
Yeah.
I'm taking my ball, I'm going home. And we would see DAX at highs despite awful economic statistics. We would see Chinese stocks starting to run. We'd see the dollar starting to weaken. We'd see gold start to run and gold actually outperforming S&P. So
Right.
I think that's the price action we're seeing. And I don't see any reason why that won't necessarily continue. So I think I think it could be very much a similar analog to what we had, if you remember back in 99 and 2000, which was from 2000 to 2003, we had a really vicious correction at the
Yeah. Bear
headline, but
market.
underneath it was heavily NASDAQ bubble completely coming unhinged. And US industrials and EMs and commodities actually did pretty well after sort of the
Right.
initial sell-off. And then they outperformed for another 5 years beyond that. So I think we may be in the early days of this capital move, not offshore, but then also this reshuffling within the U.S. markets away from the biggest Chinese Belt and Road hub in the world, which is the Nasdaq.
Okay. And that's interesting because the Mag 7 have done no better than they did in the movie. All right. Because
I saw a chart the other day. They've underperformed European banks over like the last year or 2 years, which was
yeah,
astonishing to me. I would have never guessed that without someone pointing it out. And
yeah.
to your point.
Yeah, I mean, you could just run down the list, and many of them are broken. Amazon doesn't look so good. Apple was the first one they took out and shot. Google they shot last week, right?
Yeah.
Microsoft is a crash, right? You know, it could rally. It's pretty oversold. And you know what? My biggest bearish position is in NVIDIA. Am I crazy, Luke?
I don't think you're crazy. I don't have a position on it or a view on it one way or another, but the thing that grabs me is from the macro fundamentals, right? Uh, we just described that the Americans don't want Chinese capital in Western, and so that's a capital outflow. And obviously, Nvidia's been huge,
Yeah,
beneficiary of that. But then also, I don't think, and I'm take this with a block of salt because I am not an AI
right,
expert.
right,
However, I think this DeepSeek news was almost like it has the potential to be almost like if you remember back in 2000, like April 2000, Metallica won the Napster case, right? Where they said, okay,
oh,
you got to shut down Napster. And
right,
nobody really knew how much volume was being done throughout all of the fiber networks on song swapping. And like as soon as that ruling came through, sort of excess capacity, it was in some circles, the Metallica Napster victory could be seen as sort of was seen as a butterfly that flapped its wings and caused the hurricane of the tech crash.
right.
Point
Okay,
being, this DeepSeek news, right? Like let's just take a step back and appreciate what just happened, which is a month and a half ago, AI was going to be American monopolies with monopoly
right,
profits, high moat, high capital cost. And 4 to 6 weeks later, AI is now suddenly being advocated by American interests, open source, so free, but still those same high capital costs. Like that's a 180-degree turn in the underlying business model that drives demand for a lot of chips. Will the investment still happen? Probably. Will it be a great business? Will the margins be, if the margin profile of NVIDIA's customers has changed, it's only a matter of time till the margin profile downstream starts to change. So Like it's not like, oh, it's this quarter, that quarter, but I just think between the capital flow dynamic of NASDAQ, where the
Yeah,
Americans are making clear that we don't want Chinese money in our hemisphere, and there's trillions of it in the NASDAQ, and then this deep seek thing, I think, is very much a wild card in terms of the business model might have just changed very much, and it's still going to be huge. It's still going to change the way we do things, and it doesn't mean you should give something whatever it's trading at 30 times sales or say 10 times, whatever ludicrous
yeah,
multiples. Multiples
yeah.
need to get less ludicrous, quite possibly.
Okay, so the AI, just like everything else in the tech world, becomes commoditized.
Commoditized.
Yeah, so there is no monopoly that we thought there was, and the longer we go, the more new mousetraps will be built.
I think that's right, and and then the Chinese competition side of it too, I think
Yeah,
is also enormous, right? We've heard this, well, Besant's going to sit down with our trading partners and say, "You want to be with us because we got all the best technology," and now they can go, "Well, this DeepSeek's free, and in some metrics, a lot of metrics, it's better than yours. So what else you got?" And so
yeah.
it's one of these things that has a potential to be so big. I don't think people have had the ability to really process what it could be. It's just so early. But it to me,
It's a time
uncertainty
bomb.
plus, yeah, uncertainty plus high multiples in my career have never been a good place to be. When you get
Okay,
really high multiples and then you have uncertainty where there previously wasn't uncertainty, that almost always eventually works out in lower multiples, if not
okay,
lower earnings as well.
okay. How many Trump coins did you buy a few weeks ago?
None.
Do you own a fart coin?
I do not own a fart coin.
Uh,
I
all
do think
right,
I do
go
think
ahead.
the I do think it's the most instructive thing around the Trump coin to me was I
Yeah,
have heard all for so many times, and it's very much an American insight that, well, when it's time for me to buy gold, I'll buy gold, or when it's time, right? I'll wait till it does this or that, and like Trump coin was up 12,000% in 13 hours. And granted, it was off a low base and but like I think it was instructive from the standpoint of there's a way where this can go, where like you go to bed on a Friday night, and in my opinion, gold's the one that I really pay attention to. You go to bed on a Friday night and gold's at 3,000, and you come in on Sunday night and turn on your screen and gold's 5,000 or 6,000 or 10,000. And it's
that's
entirely possible that if you're on paper, you'll get cash settled Friday. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But I think we are now into, the old, there be dragons, I
yeah.
think we're into a world where like you don't want to go into a weekend, much beyond flat if you're a trader, because these
Good
kinds of things
advice.
I think are on the table because the fiscal situation, the debt situation is so acute.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Do you have confidence in Doge and Musk and what they're doing?
Uh,
Will it matter?
it, I have confidence. Musk has shown a repeated ability to find the soft spot in the system and then basically jump up and down on it till it breaks. Like it's a superpower of his. So I have no reason to doubt that. I am have been warning very vocally that if they try to Doge before they weaken the dollar, they will end up creating a severe financial crisis. Again, dollar up, everything else down, and they're going to discredit Trump and the administration basically within the first 60 days, and then they'll be basically a lame duck for all 4 years. And so I've been very vocal that you've got to follow the correct order of operations, which is you got to devalue the debt first. You can do that by weakening the dollar. You can do that by revaluing gold higher and either buying down debt or having that money deposited into the TGA, which then reduces prospective issuance and gives Besant a whole ton of operating room.
Options.
It's effectively gold QE. And so I've been very vocal about that. I've been very encouraged in the last couple of weeks, the commentary we've seen out of Besant, right? When he comes out last week and says, standing next to Trump, we are going to monetize the asset side of the US government balance sheet for the American people. Wow. Like
Yeah.
I don't think he's talking about selling government buildings. I think he's talking
No,
about
they're gold.
remarking the gold to market, or maybe even beyond that, to create operating room. And so I think Doge is the right thing to do as long as they continue to follow that order of operations. Can they do enough? Again, it's tricky because look, if the NASDAQ goes down 20% off the highs and stays there because of what they're doing on the tariff and trade side, we can see in 2022, stocks fell 20%, US receipts fell $400 billion. So it's this multi-lever. Can Musk cut? Absolutely. Now, let's say he cuts $300 billion. That's a lot of money right off the bat. But if NASDAQ goes down 20% and stays down, which in the grand scheme of things from where it's trading is nothing,
Right. It is
in
nothing.
about 6 months, receipts are going to fall 400 billion. And so now the deficit's actually going to be 100 billion higher despite what Musk has done. And again, if they don't manage the order of operations properly, uh, you're going to end up discrediting Musk and Trump and all of it. Because if Musk makes this whole big hub about look at everything I'm cutting, and we wake up in 6 months, Nasdaq's down 20%, and receipts are down 400 billion, and deficit's actually up, he's going to look like a
Oh,
fool, and like he
okay.
doesn't know what he's doing. So I think ultimately, if they keep, they're going to be, I think, trying to cut with one hand, trying to keep the get Chinese money out of the Nasdaq with the other, while keeping it from falling too far and keeping the 10-year not too high. And I think the release valve in all of it is the
It's
dollar.
a
At the end of the
dollar.
day, like there's a lot there. They're threading a needle, but to me, sort of the blunt instruments, if I'm them wanting to try to achieve all this, I'm doing two things. Every day, I'm bidding gold. Every day, I want gold up another 10 to 20 points. Every day. Maybe one day a week I take it off, let it back off a bit just to kind of keep traders honest. Every day though, gold's got to go up. And then
Okay.
similarly, I want to keep the dollar under
Down.
1, right under 109, but better, under
Yeah.
105, under one, and if I can do those two things, it could work. It's
Oh,
going to be threading the needle. It's going to be like Maverick in the movie Top Gun Maverick, threading the valley, but
yeah.
it's doable.
So if there's a big correction in the gold market, is that a sign or a signal that they're off course and they're
I
causing
think so.
damage? So I mean,
I think so.
if we saw 2,400 in gold over the next 6 months, would that
Oh, if
mean
gold
that
goes to 2,400 and stays there like that they're telling you hell's coming. That they've screwed up. The dollar's going high.
okay, okay. So I don't have the same conviction I had about the dollar before the election, but the charts are more important than ever to me, Luke, because there's so many different narratives. Price is really the only thing you could count on in this environment. Price action.
I think that's right. And something we wrote a couple weeks ago. It's the old Sherlock Holmes statement is something I'm referring to as well, which is once you eliminate the impossible, anything else, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. And so then you say, okay, well, we're not going to let ourselves not be able to produce weapons because they're all made in China. Okay, so we're not going to default on the debt nominally. We're not going to, and once you once you start cutting out all the things there's no way we're going to do, what you're left with is, I think, your dollar view, which is like, okay, the release valve has to be the dollar. And then how do we get the dollar down? Well,
You
one way to
yield
do that
down.
is to keep gold bid. If
Okay.
gold just keeps going up every day, I think that at the very worst, I think that keeps a lid on the dollar. And I think it puts a gentle downward pressure on the dollar. If you just come in every day as a trader, like, God, gold's up another 10, 20 points, up another 10, 20 points, up another 10.
Yeah.
And that gives you that leeway. And oh, by the way, it doesn't exactly hurt the US if we wake up and gold's at 4,000 in November, because now if we still haven't revalued the gold, now it's a trillion three that goes into the TGA. And now you don't need to
Right.
issue any duration for the next 12 months, 18 months. Um, and that's basically gold QE into the midterms.
Okay. Wow. I feel caught up. I really appreciate your edifying our community every time you're here, Luke. I learn from you, and I recommend. Luke has his own YouTube channel too, does his own stuff, but as you know, he's interviewed everywhere. And look, you heard it. I don't have to say anything about it. Um, I guess conviction is not gone because you have it, Luke. And you brought it to the table, and now I have some things to monitor that I didn't 30 minutes ago. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. I'm happy to hear that. So thanks for having me
Yeah,
on. It's great being here again.
yeah, Luke, great to see you, buddy. Let's have a great decade this year.
That sounds awesome.
Luke Gromen, follow him on X at Luke Gromen. Go to the Forest for the Trees. Uh, you could at least subscribe here and start looking at his free stuff. But I think you're going to need Luke in 2025. And you know what? You could have used him the last couple of years and been long Bitcoin and gold, which he's been pounding the table on since I've known him. And that's a wrap. I really, Luke Gromen, one of the best out there, and hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Luke.
Thank
Appreciate
you. Have a great day,
appreciate.
everyone.
Yeah, great talking with you and batting the ball around. So remember, everyone, don't just count your pips, count your blessings, and don't just count your goals and everything else. Hope everyone enjoyed Luke Gromen. Okay, and all right. So you too, Ingmar. Everyone have a great day. We'll wrap it up tomorrow. It already feels like Friday to me. And see everyone tomorrow. TGIF tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Adios.
Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with Forex Analytix. Thanks for stopping by our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like these videos, share them, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the content that we provide here for free. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next video.